How you doing? I'm Callan and this is Slapped Ham. Today we're talking about some really weird things seen out at sea. From sinister ghost ships to a letter written by a World War I soldier. Join us as we take a look at the 11 creepiest things seen by fishermen out at sea. A Siberian fisherman was shocked to find a bag containing 54 severed human hands in March 2018. Surely one of the most creepy things seen at sea, the bag of hands didn't overly concern the local authorities, however. They were able to trace the gruesome find to a local forensic lab, which is thought to have improperly disposed of the body parts. Brian Allison and his stepbrother Robert Temple were the two-person crew of the fishing trawler Jan Dennis II, which sank in the North Sea in 2004. 3 years later, fisherman Barry Hunter, who'd been a drinking buddy of Allison's, reeled in a net of fish. Among his catch was a human skull. Investigators later learned that the skull belonged to Brian Allison, so that means Barry Hunter found the skull of his drinking buddy some 3 years later. Fishing off Marathon Key in the Florida Keys in 2011, brothers Thomas and Kenneth Swindle discovered a rectangular white object floating nearby. They hauled it on board and suspected that it was cocaine. The Florida Keys are a hotbed of drug smuggling activity, so this sort of haul isn't all that unusual. Their impression was confirmed by Thomas, who decided to ingest some of the substance himself. Apparently, he was no believer in moderation. Thomas Kendall began acting bizarrely and his brother had to rush him to the nearest emergency room, where sadly Thomas passed away from a cocaine overdose. In October 2012, a giant blue eyeball washed up on the beach of Pompano, Florida. No signs of the creature it belonged to were found nearby. The peeper was large enough that an adult needed both hands to hold it. First thought to be evidence of a giant squid, the eyeball is now thought to belong to a common sea creature, likely a swordfish or a marlin. According to biologist Sonke Johnson, people don't often realise how large a swordfish's eyeball really is, because most of the eye is hidden inside the head. Biologists think the eye was removed and discarded by a fisherman before it washed up on shore. This creepy, unexplained thing isn't seen at sea so much as heard. Since at least 2016, the largely Inuit population of Nunavut, Canada, has reported a strange pinging or humming noise that vibrates the hulls of boats used by hunters and fishermen. The noise travels underwater and wildlife seem to actively avoid it. While the Canadian military has investigated, no one is quite sure what causes the phenomenon. Some guesses include industrial activity of the Baffin Lands Iron Mines Corporation, research stations studying the Arctic environment, or even conservation efforts by Greenpeace. Yet no one can quite explain how these things could cause such an eerie vibration. In November 2015, 12 boats washed up on the shores of Japan off the coasts of Fukui and Ishikawa prefectures. Between them, they carried approximately 22 partially skeletonized dead bodies. These boats were found by the Japanese Coast Guard, but these boats of the dead are not an uncommon occurrence in Japan, with 65 ghost ships being found in 2014 and a stunning 80 of them in 2013. Experts think the unfortunate people who lost their lives on these boats originated in North Korea. They may have been defecting from the so-called hermit country, or they may have been fishing, drifting off course and faced starvation. The eeriest thing about it all is that several of the bodies have been found with their heads missing. Fishermen off Newfoundland, Canada caught this rarely seen deep-sea fish in March 2016. The creature looks like a Halloween prop with its sword-like nose, neon green eyes and wing-like fins. Also known as the long-nosed chimera and the ghost shark, this bizarre-looking fish was dragged to the surface in a net by fishermen from Nova Scotia. In 1999, Steve Gowan was fishing off the coast of Essex, England, when he found a message in a bottle. The message was tossed into the English Channel by Private Thomas Hughes on his way to fight in the First World War in 1914. It asked the finder of the note to pass it along to Hughes's wife and expressed the wish that it find its way to her. Hughes was killed in action 2 days after writing the note. Gowan was able to track down Hughes's daughter Emily, who lived in New Zealand, and present her with the 85-year-old message from her late father. Fritz Barger, a German who hadn't been seen since 2009, was found aboard his ghost ship by two fishermen about 50 miles off the coast of the Philippines in 2016. An experienced sailor and known adventurer, Barger took to the ocean in 2008 after splitting with his wife Claudia, who passed away from cancer in 2009. Authorities who examined Bargerap's well-preserved corpse, found sitting up at his radio, saw no signs of foul play. It was discovered that Bargerat died of a heart attack. Interestingly, due to the hot, salty air, it only took around 7 days for Bargerap's corpse to mummify. No list of the creepiest things found in the ocean would be complete without mention of the Orang Medan. This possibly apocryphal tale first appeared in print in 1948. The name Orang Medan means man from Medan, a city in Indonesia. According to the narrative, the ship was found floating near the Marshall Islands, with its entire crew found aboard dead, except for one German-speaking crew member who died shortly after relaying his story to his would-be rescuers. The dead were found with their eyes open and didn't appear to have any visible injuries. In the course of the rescue attempt, a fire broke out on the ship, which then exploded and sank, making any further attempts to investigate impossible. Accounts of the tragedy that befell the Orang Medan vary. Some reports say it carried a cargo of hazardous materials, possibly nitroglycerine or potassium cyanide. Others have mentioned the possibility that a boil room malfunction may have caused the crew to succumb to carbon monoxide poisoning. Still, others speculate that the crew died of a more mysterious, possibly paranormal encounter with something creepy at sea. In some versions of the report, the faces of the dead crew members were frozen in expressions of unfathomable horror. In any event, the phenomenon of the Orang Medan ghost ship can't be verified. No ship by the name appears in Lloyd's shipping register, an indication that the entire story may be simply an old sailor's tale. Remember to hit that big old red subscribe button and turn on channel notifications. That way you'll get all the latest updates on our content that we release each and every week. In 1935, two fishermen off the coast of Sydney, Australia, caught a net full of fish, including one irate, struggling tiger shark. The men deposited the shark in the local aquarium, where it proceeded to horrify a crowd of onlookers by spitting up a human arm with a distinctive tattoo of a pugilist. The arm turned out to belong to Jim Smith, a former boxer and petty criminal who'd been working as a police informant. Local police tracked down the alleged killer, Patrick Brady. Brady was arrested and tried, but acquitted by the jury, who felt that Smith's severed arm didn't in itself prove that Smith had been murdered or was even dead.
Well, this is the outro. Thanks so much for making it this far. If you want to watch more of our content, there's a link right there, or there's some playlist links in the description box below. Slap that upward facing thumb or subscribe if you're new. And that's it for me. I'll see you all next time.